Greetings, colleagues. I'm Steve Ndinga Binza. I'm going to be the presenter of this paper, which is a joint paper with two of my colleagues from Gabon, Paul Mavungu and Virginie Ampusa. Unfortunately, they won't be joining me in this video. Now, Gabon doesn't need any further presentation in terms of Afrilex audience. I think the audience of at Afrilex are used to knowing Gabon in terms of its location, being located somewhere in Central Africa, neighboring bilingual Cameroon, Spanish Equatorial Guinea, and French-speaking Congo-Brazzaville. And it's also known at Afrilex that Gabon is one of the tiniest countries in Africa in terms of population size, only 1.8 million inhabitants. And also in terms of area size, Gabon just like slightly smaller, bigger, I mean, just around the size of Gauteng province in South Africa. So let me just quickly move on in introducing this paper. By first of all mentioning the two aims of this presentation. Number one, we intend to highlight the contribution of lexicographic research and dictionary production in enhancing language revitalization in Gabon. And number two, it's our aim to understand the impact of lexicographic activities on language promotion in Gabon for the past 2 decades. Now, this will be my content. I'll first talk about, I will try to show that actually most Gabonese languages are actually endangered languages and they need to be revitalized. And number two, I'll broadly present what the Gabonese modern lexicography is currently. And secondly, I'll be mentioning what, and thirdly, I will be presenting on the lexicographic products that are tools for revitalization in Gabon. And number four, the perspective and challenges in terms of revitalization in Gabon. Now, I will first say that in order to understand how endangered Gabonese languages are, it is important, number one, to have an overview of a Gabonese language landscape. I'll show it later. What we have to understand that Gabon is a language diversity. Gabon, the status of native African languages in Gabon it's one of the worst status in terms of African languages in Africa. I don't know where there's any other status. What I want to say that African languages in Gabon are not recognized as official. They are not even used at school. They are not used in administration. Gabon is one of these countries where the sole language in all domains of life is actually French. And then even worse, there is the younger generation of the population that is more and more being French than any other language or culture, because they have French as their mother tongue. And the last point I may mention here, it's the national language policy. For those that are accustomed with Gabonese research, I'm sure you have read somewhere that actually the Gabonese national language policy stems from the colonial era. And then there is actually not a language policy per se, except with the constitution that says that the official language of the Republic of Gabon is French, and then the Republic actually endeavors to promote national languages, but there is no specific reference on what are these national languages, and also the constitution is actually silent in terms of what do they mean by promoting African languages, or they say national languages as they are called in the constitution. And then the second point that we need to understand, which is also important, is to consider the national population size. I mean, as I just said, like it's a 1 million inhabitants of 1 million people living in Gabon, and these people actually have to speak just a small number of people have to speak languages, a number of languages that is ranging between 40 and 62. I mean, authors are not in agreement on how many languages we have in Gabon. Some say 62, some say 40. I mean, if we look at in the publication of Ethnologue from the SIL International, they promote the idea that Gabon has certainly 40 languages now. So if we divide 1,000,000.8 people with by 40 languages, you can have an idea of how many people speak these languages, how many speakers, do we have for each of these languages, which means that there's actually less than 1 million for each language spoken in Gabon. And then one thing that I also mentioned is the Gabonese language-scape, as I mentioned earlier in the previous slide, but we need to understand it actually. The Gabonese language landscape is made of two branches. There is one branch which is local languages, and the second branch which are foreign languages. And here actually we have a realistic outline of a language countryside of Gabon, because of most of the time when people talk about Gabonese languages, we only think, or let's say not Gabonese languages, let me talk about languages spoken in Gabon. We only think of the native languages, but native languages is just actually a quarter of a whole language countryside of Gabon, because there are also foreign languages, and among these foreign languages, there are some languages that are international, like English, French, and so on. I mean, French is it's the only official language, so let me not name French as international language in Gabon, but English is there, Spanish is there as well, but there is a community of Spanish people, and also a community of Portuguese people speaking people, most of them coming from São Tomé, which is a country of Gabon. So they speak Portuguese. And then we have non-international languages, which are mostly African languages because of the Gabonese, because of the African immigrant that have established themselves in Gabon. And actually the census says that actually 15% of the population of Gabon is made of foreigners, and mostly from African nations. Now, what we have with the Gabonese language landscape, what we have here is actually an accurate picture of the languages, both foreign and native, used in Gabon. And then the number of native languages has been a topic for, as I just mentioned earlier, is like there is not an agreement of in terms of the number that we have. It's some they say 62, some they say 40, and so on. I won't tell you with which group I'm aligning, but you may just understand that I do agree on the fact that actually we have 10 language units. Like all these Gabonese languages are being grouped into 10 language units according to the terminology used by Professor Kwezibikala. Language units, actually these are groups of languages, 10 of them, the same way that the Nguni languages are grouped into a group of languages called the Nguni languages, and then they have great mutual intelligibility. It's exactly the same with the Gabonese languages. Like if you take like the Mazuna group has an mutual intelligibility which is about 99.99%. Like these people, they understand each other clearly. And then one of the group I may also mention is group number 7, the Métis group. The Métis group, according to studies by Idiata, the Métis group has a mutual intelligibility of 95%, and so on. And then another group that I can mention is group number 2, the Miene group. The Miene group has a mutual intelligibility of also about 99%. There is a great homogeneity into actually group number 2, group number 1, and group number 2 are these two groups with there is a very great homogeneity in terms of culture and language. So these groups, you can see these 10 groups, and that's where actually I'll really give you my point of view. But actually, these 10 groups can be regarded as languages per se, and then the rest will be regarded as dialect. Actually, I'm aligning with what late Dr. Neville Alexander said about the differences between within the Nguni group and within the Sotho-Tswana group, where he actually mentioned that actually, if we look at the Nguni group, we can actually just consider all of these languages as one group that may call isiNguni, and then the rest of the languages, isiSwati, isiXhosa, and isiZulu, be considered as just varieties or dialect of that big language that we may call isiNguni. So the situation is exactly the same in Gabon in terms of this 10 groupings that we have from Mazuna, Miene, Mekona, Ngote, and so up to Baka. Now, what we have to understand here is that we have, if we may call them like this, like 40 to 62 varieties of languages spoken by only 1.8 million population. Okay, and then that implies a very high language density in terms of spoken languages, like in terms of spoken languages. And number three, that also implies that native languages have no official status. That's a problem in Gabon. African languages have no status, no official status, except being loosely labeled as national languages by the Constitution, as I mentioned it earlier. Now, the language policy has been a strict continuation, I mentioned it already, of a colonial policy for the past 60 years. Gabon has been independent in the past 60 years, and but the government is still using the same colonial language policy, which is almost 100% favoring French language. And then, so the consequence of this is that there is a tremendous decline in terms of language use for African languages, for native languages. And this is a problem actually that started right from the beginning during the colonial era, where our parents and grandparents were actually forced to forget, to neglect, and to run away from their mother tongues so that they may only be able to learn and speak only French. And then the consequence of this, that actually most parents are actually reluctant in transmitting their languages to children. Okay, now, then comes here now the need, because these languages have been neglected, these languages have been pushed back, these languages are not recognized by the government, these languages are actually almost inexistent. So they they're on the verge of being extinct. Now, there is a need that poses a need of revitalization. Number one, because of what we know as the awareness about language death. So these languages are dying, and there have been in Gabon some UNESCO government initiatives that were due to some programs of UNESCO. The government has taken some measures and initiatives trying to promote them, like now in the Department of National Education. Now there is now a service or a directorate, or what is called the Directorate of National Languages. And then there are also some private initiatives and activism from NGOs that are also being more and more active in terms of promoting native languages in Gabon. And then since 1994, with the creation of a Department of Language Sciences at Mabongo University, there have been active and sustained linguistic research. So more and more linguists are being trained, and more linguistic research output are being produced. And then number two is the awareness about cultural identity. Now, it's now a trend, not only in Gabon, but in most African, let's say French-speaking African countries. There is now this new movement by local artists being, claiming their identity, claiming, now producing songs and producing cultural products through their languages, through their culture, and so on. And then in terms of at intellectual level, there are two things that are also going on. This trend of decoloniality and philosophies as well through intellectuals and so on. And then the last one, also from an intellectual point of view, it's what is known as the processes within the African Renaissance intellectual agenda. So more and more Gabonese intellectuals, because most of them are actually were trained in France and so on, being trained within the French system. So more and more are actually breaking away from this culturally and intellectually dominated French way of thinking and trying to promote more African philosophies, more decolonial philosophies, more African Renaissance induced thinking and so on. So all of these actually brings the idea of actually African languages in Gabon need to be revitalized. They need to be put alive again, because something that needs the revitalization means that it's already something that's not vital, something that is actually dying. So these phenomena, these trends and phenomena actually are these that pose the need of revitalizing African languages of Gabon. Now, in terms of the Gabonese lexicography, what we have to understand first, and I think it's already known for those that are accustomed with Gabonese lexicography research and the publications that have been made, is you can also, there is an understanding that actually a good crop of dictionary production was done by missionaries and colonial administrators during the colonial era. Gabon became officially a colony of France in 1910. And then from 1910 up to 1960, during that period of colonization, the French missionaries and colonial administrators managed to produce dictionaries, lexica, and some textbooks trying to promote, not really to promote, but actually trying to expose or to showcase African languages of Gabon. And now the second thing here we have to know about the Gabonese lexicography is the reawakening of that process of dictionary production, but because after independence, everything was stopped, nothing, no product, no national. Actually, the new government and the nationals didn't actually continue with dictionary production until the reawakening that happened from the year 2000. So from the year 2000, then that's where there were an emergence of lexicographic research work, and then dictionaries and the new process of dictionary production started in 2002 when the first two dictionaries were published, compiled, and printed, and so on. And then since then, there have been a number of dictionaries that are being published. And then now, with the reckoning of dictionary production in Gabon, there is a stated focus of enhancing language revitalization. So actually, that's one of the what we in our research we think that actually should be one of the core mission of Gabonese lexicography. Now, unfortunately or fortunately, what we can say, like if you look at this pie, what are the domains of Gabonese lexicography? Where do we see Gabonese lexicography research? Number one, you will see that most research or publications of Gabonese lexicography will be in bilingual dictionaries or bilingual lexicography. 27% of the work done in Gabonese lexicography is more on bilingual lexicography or bilingual dictionaries. And these actually also imply French, and because most of these bilingual dictionaries, usually French is one of the languages in this bilingualism. Either it's a target language or sometimes mostly target language, because we translate from African language to French. And from some dictionaries actually are also bidirectional, French Gabonese languages and Gabonese languages to French, from Gabonese languages to French. Now, and then the second domain where you see most of the publications in terms of Gabonese lexicography, it's the French language, which what we and some other colleagues, me and some other colleagues, we call the Gabonese French lexicography. Like 16% of the work produced in Gabon or by Gabonese is actually about Gabonese French lexicography. And then one domain which is also very strong in Gabonese lexicography is the planning. 14% of the work produced is dictionary planning, which is somehow a good thing, but actually, the only problem is that most of the dictionary planning are taking long to be produced. Like the planning will be done, and the work published, the metalexicographic work published, and so on. But then the dictionary will take long to be published. Now, let me just move on. The rest you can. Now, what are the lexicographic products? Okay, these are the products that we believe that can that contribute to language revitalization in Gabon. First of all, dictionaries. We have a couple of dictionaries published. We only took a few here, and we only showcasing only a few. But from our figures, we can count exactly from since the year 2002 up to now. We might have between already 30 and 40 dictionaries published in the Gabonese language, between 30 and 40. Yeah, and then apart from these, as I said, most of these dictionaries are actually bilingual dictionaries. And then apart from bilingual dictionaries, there have been also thematic lexica that have been published, and learners' dictionaries, and also encyclopedia. Like the first dictionary that you see here, very colorful on the left-hand side, it's a learner dictionary, and the one below it in blue, it's actually an encyclopedia. It's called a dictionary comparé. It's actually, I mean, when you go through the dictionary, you will understand it's actually not really a dictionary per se. It's actually an encyclopedia. Now, then something that we also count as lexicography work, as lexicographic product, it's the textbooks. Now, textbooks and other products. So then through the works done by lexicographers and non-lexicographers as well. So we have alphabet produced, we have orthographies produced in African languages of Gabon. We have language learning textbooks that have been produced, like the first three on the row of the first row that you see, these are textbooks that have been produced. And then storytell books have been produced, spelling guides have been produced, and private schools. Actually, in some private schools, they're actually introducing African languages and as subject, and they're also creating their own materials for teaching and so on. Now, my last point, I'm hoping that I'm still on time, but I'm not checking the time, but I'm done almost. So in terms of perspective and challenges, so now we believe that actually, number one, there is a great deal in terms of revitalization prospects. First of all, a crop of literature and products used for igniting language revitalization through language teaching. So all these works that all these products that I've just shown you, this is actually a good crop of literature and a product that we can use to start language revitalization. It will start through language teaching. It can start through language reappropriation. We have to reappropriate our languages. It can start through dictionary culture, teaching dictionary culture in schools and universities, teaching dictionary culture in NGOs, like cultural NGOs and so on, and a sense of native language pride, like this is what's seen in most of the artists, especially rap singers, where there is a sense of national native language pride. They're proud of themselves, and then also through the you can also see that native language pride through the website. Some people are starting their website in their mother tongues and so on, or the language of their parents. Unfortunately, there's still a lot of French in those websites, but they're already promoting their languages. Like there are websites for Yipunu, website for Inzebi, website for the Fa language, and so on. So these languages are having a website. I will refer to a book chapter that Professor Roux and I published in 2017, where we mentioned about all of these websites and internet works that are promoting African languages, not only in South Africa, but also in Gabon and so on. Now, in terms of perspective, so the fact that, one perspective that we can aim at is actually African language intellectualization. That can be done through African language teaching and learning. We have to start school curricula for African languages. We have to promote African languages as school subject in schools, and we have when there is a need of implementing mother tongue education. Although the younger generation are more and more having French as their mother tongue, but there are still a lot of a big group of Gabonese that have African languages as their mother tongue, especially those that were born and that are growing up in rural areas and villages. They still have their African languages as mother tongue. Then, in terms of challenges, now the biggest challenge that we have in Gabon in terms of promoting African languages, especially the process of revitalization, is the national language policy. The national Gabon needs to start in a national language policy and needs to implement it. So, and that national language policy should also must take actually a straight and forward position in terms of promoting African languages, and this has to be clarified. And number two, the lack of support from the government and national institutions, lack of funding, and the mindset of a senior population. As I said, they were educated during the colonial era, and during the colonial era, they were subjected to hardship so that they may forget and neglect their languages, and that produced the slow process of transmission of language from parent to children. And one last challenge is the globalization trend, where it's for the youngsters, for them they found it more profitable to learn English or any other international language than learning the language of the parent and so on. And let me go towards my conclusion. Now, we understand that language revitalization is not a research-focused lexicography. However, it is our intent to contribute to the current prospect of defining a multidisciplinary as well as transdisciplinary approach, which sees lexicography as one of the key research disciplines towards developing the endangered languages of Africa. The study is also a plea towards the determination of lexicographic principles and practices at national level, especially in Gabon. Thank you, and that's all for me today.